In this section, we'll be talking about documentation, which falls under the EMT Module 2 Patient Assessment. The objectives for the documentation slideshow are found below, and they include explain the components of a written and electronic patient care report, identify the various sections of the PCR, describe what information is required in each section of the pre-hospital PCR and how it should be entered, define the special documentation considerations associated with patient refusal, describe the legal implications associated with the PCR and ePCR, discuss all state and local records and reporting requirements, discuss elements of HIPAA privacy rule as it pertains to pre-hospital patient care reporting, and describe documentation associated with special situations. Documentation requirements, including the minimum data set that needs to be obtained during a call, includes patient demographics, vitals, the assessment, and the chief complaint. There is also additional administrative information that should be reported within your PCR, which includes the time the incident reported, time unit was notified, time arrived at the patient, the time the unit left the scene, the time arrived at a destination, and the time of care was transferred. The chief complaint is the patient's primary complaint for that particular call. Demographics include the patient's name, date of birth, address, and any other pertinent information such as social security or phone number, as per required by your department and agency. Vital signs include a heart rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate, pulse oximetry or SpO2, and can also include other pieces of information that are required by your agency. Finally, the primary assessment should include a head-to-toe and basic assessment based off of the chief complaint of that individual. This can be rather extensive depending on the individual's complaint. The pre-hospital care report, or PCR, functions as a continuing of care form that is transferred to the hospital, whether immediately at the time of transfer of the patient or shortly thereafter via an electronic records form that may be referred to at some point during the patient's stay for important information. It is also a legal document. A good report has documented what emergency medical care was provided and the status of the patient upon arrival at the scene and any changes upon arrival to the receiving facility. It also includes the person who completed the form orderly must go to court with the form. Information should include objective and subjective information and be clear. For educational purposes, it is used to demonstrate proper documentation and how to handle unusual or uncommon cases and situations. Administrative situations include billing and service statistics. Research might also look at your pre-hospital care report and evaluate if there's any important information that could be extrapolated from it. The state of Wisconsin uses a system called WARDS, which allows for the state to extrapolate this information in real time if necessary. Evaluation and continuous quality improvement is also necessary for all patient care reports in order to make sure that protocols are being followed correctly and that patient care is administered appropriately. Quality improvement allows for an individual's reports to be reviewed by a third party to make sure that everything is looking correct and that a patient or a provider's care is improving throughout the entire time that they are with that particular agency. The pre-hospital care report comes in two forms, which is the traditional written form or the computerized or tablet-based. The traditional written form should always be on any ambulance in the event of technology failure, which does occur, or the system site is down. Computerized or tablet-based is the more common and preferred method today. It allows for ease of uploading information, transferring records and files, and then also printing out reports. Each of the sections include run data, patient data. There are different checkboxes to go through regarding assessments. There's the narrative section, local requirements, and then signatures and confidentiality statements. Run data includes date, time, service unit, and names of the crew. Patient data includes the demographics, assessment findings, and carrying changes in condition. Those checkboxes must be filled out completely and avoid any stray marks, especially when on a written format. For the narrative section, this should be included in all reports and has a description. It includes pertinent negatives, records important observations about the scene. Do not use any codes or abbreviations unless they are standardized. When information of sensitive nature is documented, note the source of that information. State reporting requirements. Be sure to spell words correctly, especially medical words. And for every reassessment, record time and findings. Make sure that all of this information is pertinent to the call and that it is included within your narrative. Make sure that all other local requirements are involved, and then for your confidentiality, make sure that you are aware of any state laws regarding patient information, as well as the HIPAA, the Health Information Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. Must be adhered to when reporting information. Distribution, local and state protocols and procedures will determine where the different copies of this form should be distributed. Usually we send it to the receiving facility of that of that patient, and then a record is kept electronically through the state system. Falsification issues: when an error or omission or commission occurs, documentation of what did or did not happen and what, if any, steps were taken to correct the situation. Falsification of information may lead not only to suspension or revocation of the EMT certification or license, but also to poor patient care because other healthcare providers have false impression of what assessment findings were discovered or what treatment was given. Specific areas of difficulty: vital signs. Document only the vital signs that were actually taken. Treatment: if a treatment like oxygen was overlooked, do not chart that the patient was given oxygen. Documentation of a patient's refusal can be a little bit tricky. Documentation of a refusal must be completed by a competent adult patient or the legal guardian and have the right to refuse treatment. Before the EMT leaves the scene, however, he should try again to persuade the patient to go to the hospital. Ensure the patient is able to make a rational, informed decision. The patient must be alert and oriented and coherent and be able to make those informed decisions themselves. Inform the patient why he or she should go and what may happen to him or her if he or she does not. Consult medical direction as directed by local protocol. If the patient still refuses, document any assessment findings and emergency medical care given, then have the patient sign a refusal form. Have a family member, police officer, or bystander within reason sign the form as well as a witness. If the patient refuses to sign the form, have a family member, police officer, or reasonable bystander sign the form to verify that the patient refused to sign. Complete the pre-hospital care report. Complete the patient assessment. If the patient did not allow a complete assessment, document which assessments were completed. Document the care the EMT wished to provide for the patient and what care was actually done. Provide a statement that the EMT explained to the patient possible consequences of failure to accept care, including potential death. Offer alternative methods of gaining care. State willingness to return. In these forms, a narrative is incredibly important. We outline exactly what we said and we did and what we suggested. Whenever you have a refusal, make sure that the patient is totally informed of what could potentially happen with their condition and when seeking not care would be potentially detrimental to them. Understand that everybody has the right to refuse, whether it is in their best interest or not. They must be able to make that informed decision themselves and have all of the information presented to them. Another thing that is very helpful is offering other methods of gaining care, such as having a family member drive them to the hospital instead. Often this is beneficial if we offer that particular method because patients are concerned about the financial aspects of taking an ambulance to a hospital for care, even though the ambulance bill is significantly smaller than that medical bill from the hospital. By offering that alternative method, patients seem to be a little bit more accepting of that transportation offer. State willingness to return. Whenever we have a refusal, make sure that the individual knows that we will come back, call 911 if anything changes, or if they suddenly decide that they want to get transported. Make sure that they totally know their reasons for refusal, and if you have a form for refusal, make sure that it is signed and that they have read and understood it. Oftentimes, I read the document directly to the patient so that there can be no issues with the patient's ability to understand or comprehend what they are reading. Not everybody reads at the same level, therefore reading it out loud to them eliminates that aspect to it. Once they have signed the refusal, make sure that you document the patient was read and understood that a refusal or the reasons why, or the specific components of the refusal form. Some special situations, reports, or incident reporting. Correction of errors. Errors discovered while the report form is being written. If you have a written form, make sure that you draw a single line, horizontal line through the error, initial it, and write the correct information beside it. Do not try to obliterate the error. This may be interpreted as an attempt to cover up a mistake. Errors discovered after the report form is submitted. If it again is a written form, use a different color ink, draw a single line through the error and initial it, date and note any corrective information. If there's an electronic form, make sure that an addendum is completed. Use of addendums may be utilized for corrections of errors discovered while or after completing an electronic report. Most electronic patient care report systems have the method of entering and amending the report. If there is no way to electronically submit change or addendum, one should follow the correct method used for a handwritten report that has already been submitted on the printout of electronic reports. For mass casualty incidents, when there is not enough time to complete the form before the next call, the EMT will need to fill out the report later. The local MCI plan should have some meanings of recording important medical information temporarily, for example, triage tags, that can be used later to complete the form. The standard of completing the form for an MCI is not the same as a typical call. The local plan should have guidelines for this. Typically, if you're going to be completing a report later on, handwritten notes might be useful in this sense, especially if you're dealing with multiple patients that you'll be taking care of. Special situation reports. Used to document events that should be reported to local authorities or to amplify and supplement primary reports. Should be submitted in a timely manner and should include the name of all agencies, people, and facilities involved. Should be accurate and objective, be descriptive, and do not make conclusions. The EMT should keep a copy for his own records as appropriate. When we are using the electronic forms, this is done for us. The report and copies, if appropriate, should be submitted to authority described by local protocol, include any exposures and or injuries. Continuous quality improvement is an important aspect of report writing. This allows for looking over protocols, making sure that there wasn't any deviations, but also looking to make sure that an individual who is writing these reports and submitting them is making improvements and doing a good job overall. It is important to check over reports on a regular basis to make sure that there are steady improvements or that the individual has maintained the status of a good report writer. Not everybody is phenomenal right out of the gate, and it does take some time for providers to get comfortable at writing a good solid narrative and providing an accurate report. it should not be seen as punitive, it should be seen as constructive.